Welcome, welcome again, ladies. This is ladies and gentlemen. I'm not sure if there are gentlemen in the house, but this is the Becoming an Empowered Woman, Prioritizing Mental and Emotional Health live discussion. I want to thank you all for being here. And before I throw it over to my panelists, because I want them to introduce themselves, I am Choreo, the director of Practice Online. We do dancing, we do fitness, and this whole community was birthed out of women supporting women. And to see how much it has flourished to this point where we're not doing this conference or first life conference, it's just a vision of wonderful beauty. You know what I mean? So I'm just so happy to be here. And the first question of the day is going to be, what makes you an empowered woman? And I want everybody here to think about that, what makes you an empowered woman, and feel free to drop it in the chat. All right. So for me, what makes me empowered is, girl, I'm gonna give you a fancy term. While I was preparing for this conference, I learned this fancy term, emotional resilience. And the therapist on the other hand are like, Chrissy, that's not so fancy. But it's fancy for me. Emotional resilience. Because the day-to-day struggles that go into making you just be ordinary. But even still, adding that crown to your head and say, I am an empowered woman, it's a lot. And so that is what makes me empowered, my emotional resilience. So I'm going to throw it over to my panelists. And as I see one person raising their hand, when we start to ask the questions, right, I have a set of questions that were posted by you, right? And they're in the Google document. So those questions are going to be prioritized. And what I invite persons to do is raise their hands. And once you raise your hands, we will try to get to you as quickly as possible. So we've got a little bit under 90 minutes remaining. Let's get into it. All right, so panelists, you can unmute yourselves and introduce yourselves.
Good. Okay. My name is Dr. Kiniya Church, and I want to start by answering Chris's question about what makes us feel like an empowered woman. So for me, it's having agency over myself, because that allows me to make choices and choose behaviors that allow me to have control over my life.
Thank you. Ms. Ruru.
So what makes me an empowered woman is the fact that I take the time and do the work to be better. So those areas where I don't quite measure up to where I want to be, I take that time to be better, and I give myself grace when I don't do exactly as I wish to. So that makes me an empowered woman.
Debanti.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay, awesome. I think what makes me empowered, I think that it's, a process, right, of growing into greater empowerment. But for me, I think it's that I like myself and am on my own side, and I also remember the women in my family and my family, that has brought me here with a lot of love. And I think that empowers me as well.
Patrece.
Hi, everyone. So what makes me an empowered woman is much like everyone else have already said, but really having the power and the presence of mind to really govern myself in ways that support my well-being. I'm always checking in with myself, like daily, hourly, minute by minute, to say, what do you need in this moment? And so just really doing that check-in, really asking myself, what do I need in any given moment? And then seeking to meet those needs for myself and requiring sometimes other people with boundaries and all those great things to meet those things, that makes me empowered. So taking control over my own life and really making sure, that I'm in the sweet spot of life, which is taking really good care of myself and requiring others to do the same.
Okay. Truvella.
Hi, everyone. What makes me an empowered woman? I think the fact that I can be a bulldozer and a kitten all in the same time, right? So I know how to bulldoze and push my way through any adversity, any situation. And also on the other side, I know how to gently go through those situations as well as needed. So I think that's what makes me an empowered woman. I know how to use my strength and my humility appropriately.
All right, thank you so much. I don't see anybody dropping anything in the chats. What makes you ladies empowered? Think about it. I give you a second or a couple seconds. Natalia says, being unapologetically yourself and loving and owning everything that you are, or embracing your overall being. Love it, Natalia. Anybody else? I love that. I want about 2 more. Come on, ladies, let's not be shy. These ladies do not bite. Should I play some music in the background? Elmire, I'm so sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name properly. Oh, here they come. Elmire Oriol. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that properly. Knowing myself enough to make the most beneficial choices for myself. Love it. I love that. Knowing yourself. Ty says, I didn't want to repeat what you already said, but resilience is a strength of mind. That's fine, babe. There are only so many ways to express certain things. And if it's emotional resilience, it's emotional resilience. Tay says, showing up for myself day after day. That's a very important one. Chrissy says, being my authentic self, embracing all light and dark. That is me. Love that. Love that. Love the part about embracing both the light and the dark. Many times we embrace only the light and not the dark. Stephanie W says, being able to support and encourage others, even when things are, I believe this is tough. Yes, very good point. And oh, she's helping me pronounce her name. Elmer Oriol. All right. Elmer Oriol. Please don't take it personal if I butcher it again later on. Okay. Feel free to butcher my name. All right, ladies. So let's get into the first question. And the first question comes from the emotional resilience. And so for persons who are listening in, let me just quickly give a definition of what it is, and then we're going to throw that question right to our panelists, our experts on board. So emotional resilience, a very simple term I could find online, is your ability to respond to stressful or unexpected situations. And this is from verywellmind.com. And so our very first question, my lovely panelists, how can I develop emotional resilience when dealing with setbacks or challenges? Go ahead, Kiniya.
Hi, everyone. So when I think about emotional resilience, and a lot of times we focus on positive thinking, right? But the other thing we need to consider with building resilience is that we need to also look at our negative thoughts, our negative behaviors and patterns, and we need to try to reframe those. It's not the thought itself that we're needing to run away from, but what we need to do is take the thought and then look at how we can restructure how we're responding and reacting to the thought. So over time, if we do that, we can allow ourselves to build resilience, and it makes it easier for us to move through our setbacks and our challenges.
Mm-hmm. Okay, love that. Love this. Ladies, any other inputs on this? I really do love that. It's the thought that comes behind the issues that you're having. Anybody else want to expound on this?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Debanti.
So, this is an interesting concept that I've thought about. And I think to a certain extent, life kind of teaches you resilience. The best way I feel like it's like a muscle, just like anything else. And as you go through difficult situations and then come out of difficult situations, it's like a muscle that you're building up. So I think to a certain extent, if you go through life and if you're still here, you've already developed a certain amount of resilience. You know what I mean? Just given what all of us, I think, have gone through in our lives. But something else that I was thinking about when it comes to cultivating resilience is I think a lot of it also comes down to our ability to be uncomfortable for bits of time, you know? And actually what's funny is that if we're able to practice that in controlled manners, you know, then that actually increases your resilience. And so it's funny, since we're at Chris Coreo's channel, resistance training, I think there's good research that resistance actually increases your mental resilience as well. And let me tell you, if you're taking Chris Coreo's class, she's making you hold a squat with weights for a minute, and you're in that uncomfortable position for that will develop your mental resilience as well, you know? And so what I'm saying is this like ability to just practice, you know, just expanding our sense of comfort, where we feel comfortable or how long we can be slightly uncomfortable. I think that that's a good practice to build resilience mentally as well.
I'd
I
like
would
to
just
add.
add,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, I know we have so much to say. I was just going to piggyback on my own thought, but then also on Debanti's thought, which is the other thing is when we have things come up is challenging the accuracy of those things. And so when we go through things that are challenging for us and we have those thoughts come up, negative or positive, especially the negative ones, we want to, part of being uncomfortable is sitting there picking apart the thought to see how accurate that is and how does that actually apply.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone said a lot of great things. And Debanti, I want to piggyback off of what you said around this exercising that muscle of resiliency and emotional resiliency. And I think that's somewhat rooted in exactly what you said, being comfortable in the discomfort. But I also think we have to be okay with uncertainty. I think a lot of times, especially when I work with my clients, a lot of my clients, they are surprised that things aren't going well. And realistically, this social construct is hardwired for struggle. There's so many aspects of this social construct that is hardwired for struggle that we almost have to expect it, not in a negative way, but in a way where we're like, okay, some things are going to happen. I'm not going to always be certain about my next level or the next step or how I'm going to get through. And I think the biggest muscle that we have to exercise is the acceptance of uncertainty, and then gaining certainty and trust within yourself, becoming that empowered woman and saying, you know what, I can't trust what's going to go on outside of these doors. Struggle and challenges are going to come, but I can myself to be able to get through them, and really exercise those things. Even thinking about how did I overcome maybe some challenges in the past and applying that to this same scenario.
Actually, Patrece, I'd like to piggyback on what you just said, because that's one of the main things that helps me with emotional resilience, remembering the things that I've come through in the past. And when I'm faced with something and it feels so insurmountable, I will remind myself, look, you did this in 2002, you did this in 19, you've done this over and over and over. So why are you so pressed? And sometimes I'll really have to talk to myself, because a lot of times, at least in my life, the struggles are very familiar and they're very cyclic, you know the word I'm trying to say. They're in a cycle. And so I'll have to remind myself, I've already come through this.
Yes, love that. Kiniya, I saw your hand up. Did you want to say something?
I was on accident. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I really love that. I really love that. Really, really love that. We have a message here in the chat. Ty says, well, Truvella says, it is all about pushing through the discomfort. Excellent point. And then Ty also says here, this past week, I've had to accept this uncertainty of my current circumstance. I've slept so much better, even though I have no clue what's next for me. Yes. I got that, and that's going back to the point of, you've exercised those muscles before. It's just a matter of really self-trusting. And then we have another, let me scroll up, let me get this lady's name right. Hold on. Rio. I'm sorry. Can I call you Ella? I'm gonna call you Ella. I'm so sorry. Great points, ladies. I've been learning to take gaze off of the issues and being more intentional about looking at the whole picture. Beautiful. Ellie. Okay, thank you so much. All right, really love that. All right, so moving right along. Our next question speaks about boundaries. So, let me see here. Did I have anything extra I wanted to say before I'm going? I like to do a little intro, I like to spice it up first. So, MJ Harris. Many of us, anybody here know MJ Harris? Anybody follows Malcolm J. Harris? He's a very spicy influencer online. Anybody knows him? Ty says she loves him. Okay, I'm not the only one. All right. So MJ Harris, in his book Get the F Out of Your Own Way, he describes boundaries as a guidebook for teaching people how to treat you. Are we hearing that? A guidebook for teaching people how to treat you. It's setting people up to fail rather than empowering them when you do not give them that guidebook. And so the next question is, what are, ladies, some practical ways to set boundaries with family, friends, colleagues without feeling guilty?
It's okay. I'd like to chime in first on that one. So, my answer is really simple. It's like, just do it. You set those boundaries and you do not apologize. You don't say, I'm sorry, I can't, and I need to because I have to, but you just do it and you be okay with needing to put yourself first. So, personally, that's what I do. If I need to not answer my phone all day, and as my family calls it, go underground, then I go underground for the day. And I don't answer my phone because I need that time for me, and I don't apologize. But I do let people know, hey, this is what I was going through, and I did need that time for myself.
I'm related to Trudy, and I will tell you, Truvella, and I will tell you, she is excellent at establishing boundaries. She excels. And actually, I admire that. I really admire that.
For me, boundaries are is all of I use the language of keys. So these are the keys to be near or get closer to me. But I think the one way to set boundaries and not feel guilty is really recognize that you deserve them. Why are you setting the boundaries? Get super clear on what your boundary needs are. Again, moment to moment, you're assessing, what do I need in this moment? What do I need today? And practicing it daily is really important. And then doing it unapologetically from the perspective of, I need this so I can have a better relationship with this person. A lot of times in this age, we think boundaries are these barbed wire fences that keep people out. But no, boundaries is the gateway to let you in. So that's how I release the guilt of it. I set boundaries so we can be closer, so I can be more near you, so I can be more loving with you, so we can be in partnership and companionship and relationship together better. And so that releases the guilt because I know I'm doing this to strengthen the relationship, not to bar you from me, but to welcome you by saying, hey, you want to be near Patrece? You got to do this stuff. I need this so we can be good.
Yes.
Well, I have my hand up, but
I realize that's what I say.
I will just add that for me, I have found that when you first start implementing boundaries, it's going to be quite a challenge to not have any sort of guilt, especially if you're accustomed to and persisted in people-pleasing behaviors over time. So the best way I've found to release the guilt, and sometimes it doesn't fully release it, but it will lessen in intensity, is like Patrece said, keep doing it. Like Truvella said, keep doing it, and just set the boundary and keep setting the boundary. And the more you do it, you'll find that the guilt gets less and less intense over time. And I can say that because I used to be a people pleaser. Yep. So I know that over time, once I started setting the boundary, maintaining it, and the other thing I'd like to add is boundaries are across the board. It is not my mom can do it, but my boyfriend can't. If it is something that violates you, then you need to set that boundary across the board. So there are no pocket boundaries. This person can do this, but this person can't do it. So we have to be mindful of that as well.
Now, I don't necessarily agree with that because there are things that I let my partner do that I wouldn't necessarily let my children do, or things that I accept from my mom that I wouldn't accept from my girlfriends, if that makes sense. So I think boundaries are relationship specific, unless they are like those really hard boundaries that I think you're talking about.
Yes.
Is it Kiniya or Dr. Kiniya?
Yes, and that's what I'm speaking of.
Yeah,
Patrece.
those
I don't,
really,
yeah.
yeah.
If my boyfriend is not allowed to yell and scream in my face, neither is my mother.
Yes. Okay.
Things like that.
Yeah. But my boyfriend can rub my booty, but my mama can't. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. Like it can be really specific to the relationships, or I may share a beverage with my with my partner, but baby, my children are not allowed to drink after mama, right? If that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
So
those are the smaller, looser ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to clarify that I mean something that you would feel violated.
Yeah. That makes
if
sense.
anyone would do it, you would feel violated. Like, so those are the boundaries I'm speaking of. When you set it for one person, it needs to be set across the board. If no one can steal from you, that doesn't mean your mom can steal from you. That doesn't mean your sister can steal from you. That means that your cousin can steal from you. So boundaries like that. But the other thing,
I think sometimes the guilt part comes in when we allow one person to do something and another person to do something different. That's where guilt cultivates. But it's okay to have different boundaries or with different people based on the relationship. Is kind of where I'm getting at. Like, I think at least with my clients, I know it's like, oh man, I let my sister do this, but my partner can't do this. That's relationship nuance that I think is okay, and we shouldn't have any guilt around that.
I actually found myself agreeing with everybody who's spoken right now, and I am too a recovering people pleaser. I am probably less far along in my recovery than most people. However, I am getting better every day. It works if you work it. Anyway, so what I find is that in terms of boundaries being relational, I am finding that I have to be really clear on what my relationship is with certain people. So there are certain people that I will trust with aspects of my personal life. They can know all the details. There are other people, they're not privy to that. They haven't established the relationship credibility with me for that. And some of those people are related to me. Some of those people I've known a very long time. Some of those people think they are. And I have to become very clear on who is privy to which parts of me and being okay with that. And one of the things that has been very difficult for me in the past is kind of going along with the crowd with everything, because it seems like a good thing. But if I get that little check in my spirit and I'm like, wait a minute, no, I don't dig that. And crowd, you can do what you want to do, but I'm going to do this thing. And so really being clear on boundaries in that way has been a journey that I've been on. And I see that I'm happier as a result of not letting people tread over those.
And if I can chime in with that, I think just in agreement with you, Rhonda, is just being okay with who you are. It's putting you first, and it's knowing who you are. And that's how you know, and that's how you're able to say, hey, listen, no, you can't come across this line. You can stay back here. You can come over here, but it's just being okay with who you are and loving yourself enough. And I know that's cliche. Oh, you have to love yourself, but you really truly have to love yourself and know yourself.
Yeah. And not getting an attitude about it, because sometimes I'll enforce those boundaries, with some fist and learning that no. I can still be calm. I can be cool. I don't have to get upset about this. but this is my boundary.
Yeah, I think that this is a really beautiful topic. It's probably something that we could talk about the entire time in the class, because there's so much around this topic. But, in understanding guilt and kind of thinking about why we would even feel guilt, right? Like it is something that's been said before, but this idea that good boundaries make for good relationships has really helped me, in thinking about boundaries not as ways to hurt someone or restrict someone, but as Patrece said, to, invite them into your life, right? And the people that you're setting boundaries around, right? Like it's easy to set boundaries with maybe strangers, right? But the people that are close to us, the people that we love, the people whom we value, right? Those are the people that it's harder to set boundaries with sometimes, right? And I think that there's two ways of thinking about it. One is understanding why you have a particular boundary, right? Like, and I think Truvella, you were talking about knowing yourself and understanding yourself. And I think that that's a really important part of it. And I think that, boundaries about certain things can change over time with the same person, right? As you become closer with someone, maybe you say, okay, right now, this is the boundary. But then over time, we get to know one another. The boundary also shifts. And I think that how we communicate that boundary is important as well, particularly with the people that we love and we care about, And so, I think thinking not just through your boundaries, but also how you're going to communicate that boundary in a way that makes your needs clear is a good way to think about preserving that relationship, because that's what you're trying to do with the boundary, is to preserve that relationship, So I think also finding out how to strike that balance between being clear and direct, and also being kind and respectful and compassionate with the other people in your life as well, Just very, very beautiful topic. And again, something we could probably talk about all day.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Steffi has had her hand up. Steffi, you can go ahead and unmute your mic and let us know what's on your mind.
Oh, I just wanted to ask if you guys think that boundary and tolerance goes hand in hand. And the only reason why I'm asking is because growing up in the islands, I never heard that word boundary. What I heard was tolerance. We would say, I'm not tolerating that. I'm not tolerate that. When I migrated here to the States, and growing up in a Caribbean household, the word was tolerance. Is either you tolerate something or you didn't tolerate it. So I recently started learning about boundaries. So my way of dealing with something is that I express myself to the person and say, hey, I didn't like what you did. And if they continue, then my next resort is just to cut them off because I have already said it. So I just wanted to know, do you guys think boundary and tolerance goes hand in hand?
I think they go hand in hand. But if I had to put a definition next to each one of them, Stephanie, I would say that tolerance, not tolerating something, especially, I would say in the culture, that means like, no, I'm not doing it. I don't care how you feel. I'm just not accepting it. Whereas boundaries, like you said, or like everybody else has said, it's being able to say, I'm not tolerating that, but then saying behind that, this is why I'm not tolerating that. And being able to communicate and use like humility while you're setting that boundary, or while you're, putting the I'm not tolerating that down on the floor. So.
Thank you.
All right, so let me just get quickly to the chat here. So Tay says, boundaries are for me, not others. They exist to protect my energy and well-being, and they are my responsibility to maintain. They aren't about controlling others, but about defining how I allow myself to be treated. And LA responded to this, that's how I look at it too. The standards are for everyone else. Lauren says, Kiniya, your skin looks gorgeous. And in person, let me tell you, I met this woman at Carnival last year. She's porcelain, but that's another chat. So
Thank you.
Sage says, welcome, Sage. Sage is all the way in the car. Sage says, to me, setting boundaries is related to childhood trauma. I wasn't validated as a child. In brackets, she has, my needs weren't legitimate to my caregivers. And therefore, it became difficult for me to set boundaries as an adult. What I need is courage. I need courage to try to set a boundary. And the more I do it, the more legitimated I feel. I really believe setting boundaries takes courage for those of us who didn't grow up being allowed to set them. Ladies, any thoughts on this here?
Oh, I'll go first again. But you know what? I agree, Sage. Trauma is, oh my God. All of these, as Rhonda said, I mean, we come from the same family here. So, Kiniya, as you were speaking about people pleasing, that comes from trauma. It comes from, childhood trauma, where there's just that adverse something that happens where you grow up and you become this people pleaser because of this trauma. So you're told, do it this way, do it that way. You can't set boundaries. You can't go to your parent and say, why? You can't ask why. Well, why do I have to do that? Or why is it like that? And you grow up with fear. And when you have that fear as a child, especially in those foundational ages, when you're that little child, even months old to a couple of years old, those foundational years, you have that fear instilled in you, then that's where, that trauma comes in. And then you become this people pleaser. And then you can't set the boundaries because, yes, Sage, you don't know how. You never learn how to do it. So that's why it's very, very important to be very intentional about setting boundaries. And like everybody has said, it's that muscle memory. Just do it. Just do it. Just do it. And just do it.
I'll just piggyback and say, because I know we've talked a lot on this question, that on to what Truvella said, when you have traumatic experience in childhood, and then you grow up and you've learned to be a people pleaser because that's how you learn to get your needs met. So that actually ends up permeating all of your other relationships. And so that's why that topic of boundaries, and we have some looser, some firm, but those really firm ones, we have to really stick to them and apply them across the board.
I also want to say, first of all, thank you for sharing. That's a difficult thing to admit in an open audience. And it's, something to be commended for you to even recognize that that's what's happening for you, right? There are many people who have experienced trauma that don't know that. And, now that like that's real knowledge, right? Like that's wisdom that you can take with you, to change the way you look at your life. And that's where I think, this is a beautiful opportunity for us to chat, but also, if there's real trauma, then there's also real value, I would say, in seeking out professional support. There's a lot of ways in which trauma can be dealt with and used also in a way to grow and become a bigger person than you are, right? And so as painful as trauma is, the way we respond to it can teach us a lot about ourselves and also can lead to a lot of growth as well. So, so again, bravo for you for just recognizing that that's what's going on.
Yes, very, very true. Right. So Tay also adds, boundaries are nuanced. They're personal guidelines to protect my peace and energy, adaptable based on context, but ultimately for me to honor and maintain. A very good point. Excellent point, Tay. It does look like that. All right. All righty. All right. So moving right along. Any other? I know this is a very big topic. It could take the entire hour, but any other notes you want to add? Sage, while you're thinking on it, ladies, Sage says on boundaries versus tolerance, a boundary might also be like, I'm not going out tonight because I'm not in the mood. It's not necessarily about tolerating other people, A boundary is about listening to your own needs and feeling legitimate or okay in doing so. Of course, others could be pressuring you to go out. So then, yes, you still have to set a boundary with them. Yes, no problem.
I want to speak to that because, as we said, I am in Puerto Rico at a conference with people texting me to come to the pool. And and I know that after this discussion, I'm not going to feel like it. And I have literally been thinking about, oh, what's going to be said, what's going to be. I really want to sit here with my water and that TV, and that's what I want to do. So thank you, person who answered that question, for being used, because that was my answer. I'm joking, but I'm not.
All right, so Debanti has here a book recommendation. This is on boundaries, Debanti? Yes, a book recommendation for Where You End and I Begin. So it's right there in the chat list. You can go and check that out. All right, so moving right along to our third question. Now, according to positivepsychology.com, having self-compassion means being able to relate to yourself in a way that's forgiving, accepting, and loving when situations might be less than optimal. So question number 3 is, how can I shift my mindset from self-criticism to self-compassion?
So there was another question sort of related to this also in the longer list, and there were, I think, a couple questions about self-criticism and not feeling good about yourself and not speaking very nicely to yourself and things like that, and I think that this is something that as women, right, a lot of us have had experience with this, or at least this coming up, and it's a hard one to kind of move yourself away from, right? I mean, we've all heard the adage, well, we would never talk to a friend the way you talk to yourself, and that's totally true. But when the situation happens and when it's happening, right, it doesn't feel good. And then afterwards, we don't feel good about having done it, So it kind of is a little bit of a double whammy sometimes, right? And it's hard. It's hard to change our mental practices or habits, if you will, just overnight. Right. And so I think that this is also one of those things where it's beneficial to think about it not as like, okay, I'm going to stop saying negative things to myself all at once, but see if we can build little by little positive habits that bring us closer to where we want to be, rather than just being mean to ourselves and then being mean to ourselves for being mean to ourselves. Right. And so maybe one easy way to practice this is to also, after one has said all of those negative things to oneself, maybe also just say, okay, whenever this happens, I'm also going to give myself one compliment, or do something nice about myself, so that we're saying, okay, this is one way to be. I'm going to try out, at least just for a little bit, what this other way of being feels like, and then slowly, instead of trying to demolish this big pattern altogether, you're building yourself a new wing of a house intentionally, exactly, to move into that place. But the other part of it also is, if this is happening a lot, there's probably something within you that's not fully being met in terms of what you need as well, right? And so I think that there's also a component of like really, a little bit of self-inquiry and what's going on with yourself and what is it that you need that perhaps is not being met at the flip side of it, in addition to building an intentional practice.
I really like that concept, Debanti, and there's something you said, how sometimes we'll say, I wouldn't talk to a friend the way I'm talking to myself. I actually look at it a different way. I have zero tolerance for anyone speaking poorly to me. This is a place where I have a very strong boundary. You will not speak to me inappropriately. You will not speak to me in an appropriate tone. You will not yell at me. You will not call me out of my name. That is not going to happen. And so when I begin to speak poorly to myself, I'll sometimes say to myself, oh, wait, you wouldn't let somebody else do this to you. Why are you doing it to yourself? Because, yeah, no, that does, you will not speak to me poorly. And that is I don't know where that came from. I don't know why that is, but that is one boundary that I have very strong. And you can even tell, can't you? Anyway, you're starting to call me Miss Rhonda as I speak. Anyway, and but that has served me well. And I love that concept of giving yourself a compliment. One of the things that I try to do is always treat myself really, really well in terms of like what I wear around my house, what I eat. Truvella knows, by the way, Truvella is my niece. I'm endlessly proud of her. She's only 7 years younger than me, but she's still always going to be my little niece. But anyway, so she's a therapist. I love her. Anyway, so had to get that in. But even if you come to my house to eat, I am going to set the table. There will be flowers on that table. There will probably be a charcuterie board. There will probably be several drinks, whatever type of thing that you want. And I treat myself like that as well. My snack will be in a lovely dish. I will have on a Tory robe. I will smell good. And those are things, and that type of practice has helped me with a lot of low self-esteem, and it's helped me just throughout my life, just treating myself like I'm just my own little sweetie pie has really helped me.
I would say, to just piggyback off of Debanti and Rhonda, that Debanti made a comment about self-inquiry and what part of yourself, what needs aren't being met. And then sometimes we externalize our needs being met. And when we're looking at ourselves and having introspection and trying to figure out why does this keep coming up, what need of mine is not being met, something to consider is if I can't look outside of me and get someone else to meet that need, because that's often what we do, how can I find ways to meet that need within myself? And that can be a challenge, and it can take time to get to that point. But that's something else to think about when we're talking about introspection and meeting needs and not externalizing getting our needs met.
Then I would say, going back to that topic of trauma, a lot of what we feel about ourselves does come from childhood trauma. It comes from trauma throughout your life, and it comes from someone constantly reminding you that you're not enough, or reminding you that you're not this, or you are this. And when that's drilled and drilled and drilled into your head, no matter what, and you can grow up and you can be well accomplished, you can be educated, you can be all those things, but you still internally have this beat in you, someone drove that nail in you that you are not enough. And you grow up and you are all these things sparkly on the outside, but on the inside, you are not enough and you feel like you are not enough. So, like everyone said, Kiniya, Debanti, you got to dig inside. You got to go inside. You got to take all that ugly packaging out, look at it and see what it is. And you got to deal with it, and you got to trash it.
Sometimes you have to recognize too that all that accomplishment is about trying to prove that you're enough, and it's the cousin for people pleasing, so it's just, okay, what can I do, what can I achieve? And I'm not telling you what I think, I'm telling you what I know. And you can wear yourself out trying to be all things to all people and be involved in everything because you're trying to prove you're something when you're already valuable.
Absolutely. Echoing everything that everyone already has said, I think what I like to always say is not perfection, it's practice. And so we have to practice self-compassion. We have to practice self-love. We have to practice being sweet to ourselves. And, to even piggyback off of what Trudy is saying, or Truvella is saying, I'm picking up Rhonda's name for her, that, yes, we have these childhood traumas or past traumas, but we all are also presently being traumatized. We're always constantly being reminded that we're not enough by everything that comes at us from this social construct. This is a beautiful space where we're all being celebrated and we're giving each other shouts out about, self-love and all this. But the minute we step out of this space, we're going to be bombarded with these messages that something is not enough about us. And so it's a continuous practice. I love Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements. And one of his teachings, he talks about that we're here to create, explore, seek pleasure, and heal pain. I'm sorry, avoid pain. But I always add heal pain. So yeah, you want to avoid the painful things, but you also have to be in this constant state of healing, because we're in this constant state of being told we're not enough. And so when you don't get down on yourself, when the practice of being sweet to yourself is challenging. Everything about this world tells us to not be sweet to ourselves, to adopt what Rhonda is talking about, which is grind culture, and be productive and go, 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 and do, do, do. And you got to do all these things to be enough when you were born enough. And so as a practice, and reminding yourself of that, and acknowledging what are the things that is taking me away from really genuinely loving and caring for myself, or talking nicely and sweetly to myself, and having self-compassion.
Absolutely love that. Ladies, I do hope that you are taking notes. I am a bookworm over here. I'm just writing, I'm writing, I'm writing. I'm enjoying this so much. The practice of being sweet to ourselves. I love that. It sounds like the title for a really good book about self-love. Hint, hint. So Natalia says, I've been no contact with him for a year. Was there a part one? Oh, here's a part two. Natalia says, oh, I agree with Truvella, and I stated it before in our chat. I have an older brother that I experienced physical, verbal, and emotional trauma with. I was also always a people pleaser when it came to him. I've been in no contact with him for a year, and I found that it was definitely hard for me to speak positively towards myself, because I could always remember the negative that was said to me. But Chris's challenges have definitely helped to shift that mindset and instill positive self-talk. Ladies, what do you have to say about this, when that person who is causing you to distrust yourself, to question yourself in a negative way, or self-talk in a negative way, is actually your family member?
Well, I don't differentiate between family or friend or foe in terms of taking care of myself or setting the boundaries, right? And I think many of us is probably really thinking the same thing, is that no one gets to talk to you poorly. No one gets to treat you poorly. Now, with that being said, we all are talking about, childhood trauma, our childhood averse, the adversities we face during childhood. And sometimes we are not able to protect ourselves. But the minute we get to a place where we can protect ourselves, I want everyone who can hear my voice to know you have permission to take the steps to protect yourself, even if it is a family member, even if it's your own child, even. I think my son was maybe 10 or 11 years old, and he was working through some anger. And even at that time, I said, when our relationship stop being obligatory, when you become a young man, I wouldn't, based on how you're behaving, based on how you treat me, based on how you talk to me, I would no longer choose to be in relationship with you. I told him that. He was like 10, between the ages of 10 and 12, right? He was in that preteen energy. And then I got those teenagers, they're now baby adults. But I was very frank with them. Like, I will not continue to be in relationship with you outside of the obligatory nature of our relationship as your parent if you don't treat me well. And I use that as an example because I don't care who it is. You get to set boundaries with those people, with that person, to protect your well-being, your peace of mind, and more.
Thank you. I love that so much. And then before I get back to the chat, a part of my taking notes, I don't know if this will be helpful to anybody, is also because we have so many experts on board, I'm writing down word for word what they have said, because it's communication is one thing, it's how it's done, what we've always heard, right? And you saying something like, I will not continue to be in a relationship with you, it hits different from you know what, I don't like what you're doing, go away, leave me alone. You know what I mean? It sounds different, so I really do like that. All right, let me get to the chat really, really quick so we can move on. Ty says, we are enough, period. Point blank says. Tay says, yes, more than enough. Yes. Ellie says, yes, this is such a good convo. Yes. Natalia says, I almost have a whole page full of, hello, I have my whole book. Dr. Kiniya says, I would encourage everyone to detail what being enough means to you specifically. I really do love that. Yes, I'm about to do that just now. Tay says, get the boot, they get the boot too. That was in response, I guess, to the relationship question. If it's somebody that's close to you, is giving you that problem, those negative vibes. Ruru says, I find it is often family in my case, even though sometimes they are not aware they are doing it, they too have endured trauma. I get that. You know what? Let me just, Kim says, I agree. It happens so much more often with family than friends of acquaintances. All right. Excellent, excellent, excellent points, ladies. And I think everybody kind of has, well, I know I do, a family member too, that probably, even if it's in jest, they will make fun and then they'll say, you know, we're just family, we're just joking about it. But no, no, and it all comes back to boundaries again. This is so beautiful. I'm enjoying this. Ladies, my next question is, and just to give you an idea of where we are, we have 15 questions. We're only at number 4. It's been 55 minutes. This is the conversation's juicy. So, ladies, I want you each to tell me what is emotional well-being or emotional health. And then the second part of that question is, what are some daily habits that can help us to improve emotional well-being?
Well, I guess I'll go. So what is emotional? You said, what is emotional health and well-being? Like for me. So what that means to me is just having peace with whatever. If it's bad, if it's a hurricane, I'm peaceful. If it's sunny and birds chirping, I'm peaceful. So I think that's what emotional well-being means to me. It just means having the ability to just be peaceful and content in whatever situation is around me externally. And the daily habits, I've just recently started practicing meditation again and being serious about it. So I do that every morning. It helps me to just kind of focus and ground myself before my day. So, you know, doing it again, it was hard because, you know, when you first start doing it, you're thinking of, what am I going to cook tonight? And how do I have to do this? And what am I going to, you know, but you have to practice it. So, you know, now I'm at the point where the meditation is, I'm able to focus and I'm able to get my full 15 minutes in. So that's a daily habit that I do in the morning. I meditate and I pray, and that grounds me and starts my day off well.
I would say for me, emotional wellness, emotional well-being is one, having awareness of what my emotions are, and then deciding how to cope with those emotions, whether they're, you know, positive or negative. As far as daily practices for me, I'm not always great about it, but the first 5 to 10 minutes in the morning, I like to not touch anything. I think being professional women, working women, we like to automatically go to our phones, check our emails. I'm very guilty of it. So I try to be intentional about the first 5 to 10 minutes of my day, getting up, meditating, like Trudy said she does. But then I also do breath work. And other little daily habits that I have is I'll stop in the middle of my day sometimes and just take a 5 to 10 minute moment to breathe. If I'm out running, say I'm running for the day, I have errands, say I'm eating food on the go. I generally cook at home, but say I'm eating food on the go. Instead of eating and driving, I will sit where I'm at in my vehicle, or, you know, maybe they have a little patio or something, but if it happens to be fast food, I'm guilty. I will sit in my car and I will eat it, and I will take that moment instead of moving on that hustle and bustle. So taking those moments to be present. And then at the end of my day, I like to do breath work again. and do meditative practice as well. I have an app I use sometimes called the Calm app. And other times I don't use anything. I'll just try to sit in stillness and force myself to be present. And meditation is definitely a practice because my mind can have 1,000 thoughts. So.
I think it's a really beautiful question, right? What is emotional health? I was thinking about it, and I think that's like different for everybody. But for me, I think good emotional health is having a good relationship with all of my different emotions, you know? And like to me, what emotional health isn't is feeling happy all the time, because I don't think that that's possible for us as human beings, you know? It's not. No matter what is going on in your life, you're going to have some ups and downs, right? And so understanding and you know, being friends with the lows as well as the highs, I think to me that is emotional health. Being able to come back to a place of centeredness as life kind of, you know, tosses us around, for me, that is emotional health. And as far as daily practices go, I think some of you know, Chris certainly knows I have a meditation practice. And so, you know, practice, as everyone has said, meditation and breath work. But, you know, I don't think that it has to always be like, if that's not something that you feel is accessible to you, it can even be something as simple as, you know, as Dr. Kiniya was talking about, you know, she's taking time to just be with her food and be present with her food. It can even be as simple as, you know, you're sitting with your morning coffee and you just take those 5 minutes just for yourself and really enjoy, you know, allow yourself to enjoy that moment. Like giving time to ourselves, even if it's like small, short periods of time, I think is one of the best gifts that we can give ourselves, you know, because we're always engaged with everybody else and everything else, right? And even when we're alone, as the thing was mentioned, you know, we're on our phone, and that's fine. I'm on my phone too. Like it's not, you know, everyone is, right? But building a relationship with yourself and giving yourself a little bit of your own time, I think goes a long way in really enhancing our emotional health, but also in improving our relationships with others, right? Because then we're filling our own cup too, right? We're filling our own cup and we're better able to be with other people and also to be there for other people if we're, you know, starting with a full tank, if you will, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what everyone has said. So emotional health is a person's ability to cope with both the negative and positive emotions, which is echoing what so many have said. And for me, that starts with acceptance, like Debanti is saying, like accepting that there is going to be highs and lows. And so I adopted the practice of, if I'm depressed or if I'm sad, I say, and I tell everybody around me, I'm depressed. I'm struggling with sadness today. So not only do I accept it, one of my boundaries of the keys to be close and near to me is that I require the people in my life to be okay with all of my big emotions, whether they're the really happy, pretty, flowery ones that feel warm and fuzzy, or the ones that don't feel so good. I'm depressed today. And I share or even acknowledge for myself the things that is maybe depressing me or the depressive things in my life or in the collective, and I just allow those things to be present and true. And so my practice is acceptance of self. I also live, love, and work and play and do all the things in such a way where I center and prioritize my well-being and create the space where I get to be depressed. So if I'm having a bad day, or I'm sad, or I'm angry, or I'm frustrated or disappointed, all the litany of emotions, I get to be present in that. And maybe that looks like moping. Maybe that looks like kind of stumping a little bit around the house or whatever. And I do require the people who love me to be accepting too. That's a boundary of whatever I'm journeying through. Not in a way where I'm projecting onto them or making them uncomfortable or making their lives miserable because I have a struggle, but just accepting the fact that I'm having this experience and accepting the fact that I get to take up space in the presence of that.
I think for me, it looks different every day. what I might need for my emotional wellness on Monday might be different than what I need on Thursday, might be different than on what I need Sunday. And what I'm learning to do is just accept how that looks every day. And I mean, this is basically what all of you have said as well, but I'm learning how to just accept how that looks every day. And I also like to have a morning practice, and that morning practice for me starts with it's a good day when I remember to thank my creator for creating me the moment I wake up. That is just to wake up with that kind of gratitude and to be able to have a day where I've spent time in scripture, in prayer, in praise and worship. That lifts me in a way that I can be better to other people and I can be better to myself. And on days when I don't do that, I have learned, and we keep using the word practice because indeed it is a practice. I've learned to be like, you know what? You didn't do this today, but you'll do it tomorrow or the next day or whenever. Just giving myself a break. So if I could sum it up in one sentence, emotional wellness for me looks like just giving myself a break.
Love that. Beautiful. All right. So going to the chat here, Tay says, being enough for me means knowing who. Oh, she's quoting Dr. Kiniya Church here. Knowing that who I am right now is worthy and complete. I'm learning to accept myself without needing perfection or validation. Exactly. Jennifer says, journaling or turning on voice memos and just speaking my heart to my future self helps with my emotional well-being. Excellent. Kimberly Joseph says, meditation or prayer works in recollecting myself from any negativity in the morning and before bed really does help. She says this to at Truvella Porta and Dr. Kiniya Church. Stephanie W says, being consistent with what keeps me grounded, that is prayer and a scripture. Excellent. Lauren says, okay, all right, okay, cool. All right, so we move on. All right.
Say something. Geez Louise, how did I forget journaling? I'm a writer and all I do is just like write constantly. So there's that too. Writing, journaling, being able to have a place where I can capture my thoughts and imaginations, and even my prayers, I capture them in a book. And so I don't know how I forgot journaling. That's a huge part of my life.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Very good point, Rue. All right. So moving right along. This question here, I'm just going to ask the question. How would you protect your heart, tough one, from hardening against the world after consecutive heartbreaks, violations, and mistreatments?
This question, I was reading the questions and this question really stood out to me. And it made me feel what the person was feeling, right? And first of all, whoever wrote this, I'm sorry that this is something that you're going through. Like, that's painful. That's not a pleasant experience, not a pleasant feeling. So, just know that you're not alone. These things happen with all of us where we feel like sometimes, oh, like, I just want to give up. Like, life sucks, I think we've all had moments like that, right? But when I read this question, something that really stood out to me was that, when this sort of, and I was reflecting upon my own experience too, when this kind of feeling comes about, I think it's a good indicator that there's something, some hurt, some sorrow, some pain that is looking for a little more attention from you, And so however you want to kind of approach that, whether it is through, giving yourself a little time, going to the beach or something, being in nature, being with yourself, seeking professional support, like for real, like, I think that you can talk to your friends and things like that, but there's real value in seeking professional support if there's something that is causing your heart to hurt that way. And also maybe checking in with yourself and seeing if this is a symptom of you just feeling generally burnt out too, like, are you generally not just due to a particular event, but are you just generally depleted? Are you generally low in resources? Is there something that you need in that moment that maybe it's just going away for a day or so and getting some sleep somewhere? Maybe you're not rested enough. Maybe you're just stressed from a lot of different things. So, the fact that you're feeling this way, your emotions, your body is telling you something. And I think that it is an invitation to listen, and just say, okay, what is it that I can do to support myself, because my system is saying I need help, So great to notice again, that this is happening, but there's a way to move forward from here into a place of self-care, which is a loaded word, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But I think this really is an invitation for self-care.
I want to piggyback off of Debanti and say that when we are looking at something and trying to dig and find out what else is it that we need, and we touched on this a little bit before, is sometimes when situations keep repeating themselves, I had to learn this myself. So I am a practicing provider, but I'm, also I'm human too. So I've experienced traumas and things like that as well, heartbreaks, setbacks. If you really peel it apart, sometimes you'll see that need that's not being met is presenting itself across different situations, and it maybe just looks a little different. For instance, say your need is to be prioritized, and say that's never something you really experience. So maybe you're in a relationship with a partner and you don't feel like they make time for you, and they don't meet that need of yours. But that could also be in a friendship where when you reach out and try to set up maybe going out to dinner or something, that friend doesn't make time to meet with you either. So sometimes if you look at it, it's the need, and if you can peel it back and figure out what the need is, then you can really address it, because it will present itself actually across, like I said, multiple different situations. And sometimes we don't recognize it because we compartmentalize it to just this one situation. But if we look at things over time, we'll see, oh, that's what I'm seeking. I'm seeking to be prioritized. I'm seeking, to feel loved, or whatever that is you're looking for at the time. But I would say just try peeling it apart and then looking at your relationships or your interactions over time. And is that repeating itself in different ways? I mean, even for me, sometimes my mom I will be on the phone with her, and one of my siblings will beep in and she'll end the call with me. And I may or may not have something really important I want to say to her, right? But in that moment, I'm like, she's not prioritizing her conversation with me. And when I talk with her, when she calls back, I'll say, Mom, I was really calling to just have a moment with you. And when you ended the call, I didn't feel like it was important to you at the time. So then also being able to speak about it. And I know it's something small, but we can probably all look at our lives and see that we've had little incidences like that too.
Actually, Kiniya, you know that in my mind you are goals. And I think we are actually sisters, because my mom, if I'm on the phone, especially if Trudy calls, she is going to get off that phone with me so quickly. But you know what? And my other sisters, we've talked about that, how she'll do that to the point now where it's almost it's almost like a joke. So don't feel alone. It happens in other families.
I think to add to everything everyone is saying, I think an additional thing to do in that self-reflective moment is not take what the person is doing personally. That is, and really nothing others do is because of you. Whether they're being sweet to you or they're being, I'm going to say the bad word, shit to you, it has nothing to do with you. Now, I do think that if someone is treating you poorly, you do need to advocate for yourself and say, oh, that hurt, that bothered me, you're harming me in this way. And try to advocate for that person to treat you better. But I think one of the things that freed me from my emotional turmoil and always having my little feelings hurt is to not take things personally. And it's a practice again. I take things personally all the time, but then I go back and I practice. I do the steps to practice not taking it personal. our moms getting off the phone with us to answer the call for our other siblings or those grandbabies or those, all that other thing or whatever. Anytime someone really chooses something else or someone else over us, it's not personal. And I think the important question is to not make an assumption about it, like, oh, they don't care about me, because that's what we do. I'm not priority, right? We're making an assumption in that moment. It's to really go back to say, hey, I felt not prioritized in that moment. Why did you get off the phone with me? Why did you answer them and end our call with me? Usually the person will let you know exactly why they did the thing. And it may not make sense to you, but sometimes it will. Sometimes it'll make sense. Like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It wasn't personal. And then you can kind of move on from the hurt from
I can piggyback on what you said about not taking things personally. There's a quote, and it is that everyone is doing the best that they can with the resources that they have.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
yep. So everyone's doing the best that they can with the resources they have, and that includes their experiences and the things they've learned. So when learning, one, to understand what my need was and what I needed to feel in the moment, learning not to assign something negative to the situation. When I was younger, then there were things that I needed to work through because of how my childhood was over time. But then you learn, once you do a lot of introspection, it can take a lot of work, but you learn that, hey, separating the person from the behavior sometimes is really what we need to do. And then taking ownership of what our emotion is instead of trying to assign it to someone else. So those things have helped me over time, and hopefully it can help someone else.
All right, Steffi says, by giving yourself grace and giving the other person grace, sometimes we don't comprehend the extent of the impact of our actions. Because with that being said, allow yourself to heal, talk it out, and talk to a therapist or professional counselor. 300%. Lauren says, forgiveness is for you, not those who forgiveness is for you, not those who hurt you, and forgiveness will open you up to better opportunities for connections and make you attractive to others with your energy while still using your boundaries to prevent further harm. Any comments on this statement, ladies? Let me repeat it. Forgiveness is for you, not those who hurt you, and forgiveness will open you up to better opportunities for connections and make you attractive to others with your energy while still using your boundaries to prevent further harm.
So I agree with that, right? Like, I think that forgiveness is for you at the end of the day, right? Because it's your mindset and your emotional space that is being affected by your forgiveness. But also think that it's important not to rush to forgive somebody if they've done something that is negative to you. Like, there is a value. Forgiveness for me is a process, right? So there's value in undergoing that process and being okay with the fact that maybe at this moment I cannot forgive this person for something that they have done. That is okay. And I think that we need to give ourselves permission to go through that process rather than reaching for perfection all the time, or what we think of as perfection, right? Like, okay, ultimately, we want to not be traumatized. We want to be happy, but the feelings that we have are there for a reason. And it's important to give them space. It's important to give the negative or the sorrowful or the, vengeful parts of ourselves space, allow ourselves to be our full selves and learn how to work with those parts of ourselves too. So great goal, but it's okay if you're not there right now.
Yeah, I see it almost that way. I think that you can forgive someone and not be in relationship with them. So I think that in that process, you can continue to make, because I totally agree it's a process, and you're continually making that decision. But just because I don't want to be in relationship with you doesn't mean I have forgiven you. I have there is literally a person who has made a threat on my life, and I've forgiven that person, but I won't be in relationship with that person, and I won't be around that person. I won't talk to that person. There have been people who have encouraged me to, speak to that person. I will not. And I've actually forgiven that person because I think I understand why the person went that route, but that person can't have access to me. And so, but I've forgiven the person, and so, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think that emotionally forgiving someone has to do with you suddenly letting them back into your life. I think that there are certain cases where saying this person does not have access to my life is absolutely the right thing to do, And so I think that there's that separation between what, just as you talked about, right, is how you're feeling inside within yourself versus what boundaries we're setting for others, and then they go hand in hand a little bit, but just because you're forgiving somebody does not mean they get access to you again.
Mm-mm. Oops.
Okay, says my mom too, no manners. Lee says, I can so relate. Okay, this is the point that Doc said earlier. Lauren says, I'm doing much better about not checking email first and staying off Insta, etc. But I can't help but check Chris's group WhatsApp because it often inspires and helps the day start on a positive note. Using a special prayer mat or secret place to meet with God can help so much. And Kim agrees, she does the same. This group definitely has helped redirect my emotions. Glad to hear it. Ty says, that was my question. And I think the key I was missing is it taking things personally. It's been easy for me to personalize because I am in such a sensitive space, and the people close to me have been mishandling me, and it's been making me feel a little bitter because it's been affecting my entire life. Thank you, panelists, for your input. Thank you. All righty. Tay says, I think Caribbean parents emphasize a tough love approach. I do agree. I do agree. Patrece says, book recommendations, set boundaries, find peace by Nedra Tawwab. Hope I didn't butcher that name. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. So there are some texts that you guys can check out, ladies. So you can screenshot, copy and paste. Let me move right along to our next question. We have 8 minutes to go. On the topic of relationships, I've been enjoying myself so much. Let me just find this quickly. A very important question. Toxic relationships. Now, in social media, we have started to glamorize this idea of I'm toxic. And maybe it started, if the millennials are in the house, I don't care if I'm aging myself, know that very popular song by Britney Spears, "And the taste of your lips, I'm on a ride." That's all you're going to get from me today. Toxic by Britney Spears. And if you go back and read the lyrics of that song, of how this woman is in this relationship with a toxic partner, I want to ask you ladies on the panel, what to you is a toxic relationship? A, and B, this might actually be our last question. Let's see. What is a toxic relationship? And B, how can I navigate toxic relationships while prioritizing my well-being?
Just to clarify the last part B of the question, was the question, how do I navigate toxic relationships by prioritizing my well-being?
Yes, that was the question.
Okay. Well, I don't think if you're in toxic relationships that you're prioritizing your well-being. So I'll start off that way. Now, given, sometimes we're in toxic relationships that we can't end or we can't quickly end, but we should always try to end the toxic relationship if we can. And I say that because sometimes we're in a toxic relationship with our employer. Sometimes, I feel like I'm in America here in the States. I'm in a toxic relationship with the United States government, right? And so we can't always end the toxic relationships that we're in, but I can acknowledge them, and then I can lessen the impacts of that toxic relationship on me based on my well-being. But if it's not this big thing, governing thing in your life, and it's something you can end, I think you cannot heal in the same environment that is harming you. And so we should we should do the work to try to end the toxic relationships or minimize the impacts of that toxic relationship in our lives. The first question was around, remind us of the first question, Christy.
Right. So the first question is, what to you, in your opinion, is a toxic relationship?
Oh, anything that impacts your well-being is a toxic relationship, right? And you can have a toxic relationship that's something that's pleasurable. I'm going to use even exercise as an example. And I know we all love exercise and we are wanting to be in your class and doing all these things, but anything in excess can be too much, or anything that causes hurt or harm or impacts your well-being can become toxic if you become, it's kind of that idea of too much of a good thing. But I talk about the 7 pillars of health, and anything that impacts your health and well-being is toxic to you. It's harming you.
So I'll go. So what is a toxic relationship to me? And I agree with you, Patrece, when you say anything that's harming you. I will add on to that, anything that disturbs your peace. I'm really big at peace, on peace, having peace in my life, just calm and peace. But anything that's just disturbing your peace. And, how do you navigate through that? I guess I would say that, toxicity comes in different levels and different forms. So, you can have a toxic relationship that's abusive, physically abusive or emotionally abusive, and it's like, or sexually abusive, and it's like, I have to get out of this because it's toxic and it can be life altering. I need to move away from that. But then, there's another level. So like you can be in a toxic relationship with someone. I'll use an example. It could be a family member or a friend who may be a negative person. And when you talk to them, there's constant negative communication. They're constantly feeding you negativity. That's toxic. So does that mean you have to end that relationship? No. But, then we go back to setting the boundaries. You have to set those boundaries of what you let into your life. So, do you have a conversation with this person and say, hey, I know you're going through this, maybe you can get some help, but when I talk to you, it makes me feel a little bit down. I'm there for you. I got your back. I'm gonna ride and die with you, but I got to protect my well-being as well. So, there's just the communication and the humility of it. Just, we go into that tolerance thing and the setting the boundaries, like, okay, I'm not having that, but this is why I'm not having it. This is what it's doing to me. I can't handle it right now. I can't handle, the negativity. I can't handle, that right now. So I guess, toxic comes in different levels and different forms. And yes, like Patrece said, if it's something that's like life altering, going to harm you, some abuse that's just like out of order, get away from it. You end that. But if it's like toxicity that is in these little bitty spews of you're being fed like negativity or criticism or whatever, and this is a person that you don't break relationship with, you do set the boundary and you communicate that this is toxic. I'm not doing that with you.
Yeah, and I think that this is like it's an interesting thing, I think that as we grow in our own journey towards, self-actualization, like learning to know ourselves, getting better with our boundaries, our relationships with others are going to change. And there are relationships that might not have felt toxic before, because you were in a sort of pattern that felt good to you or felt safe or normal or familiar to you, that other person was kind of feeding into, and as you grow, relationships around you might change. And I think that that's a good thing, and sometimes with self-growth comes a bit of void as well in your life, because you naturally grow out of certain patterns that no longer serve you. And just being okay with that, I think is a big factor in allowing what's like not great for you to just naturally drop away from you. You know what I mean? Like Sometimes there's just going to be stuff that does not fit anymore, and giving yourself that permission to say, okay, maybe I've outgrown this relationship, you know?
Mhm.
Um,
I'll just add, for toxicity, anything harmful or unpleasant, right? So that's toxic. But there's different levels, like Patrece said, like Trudy said, like Debanti's touching on. And then as we grow, yes, certain things that didn't seem nefarious to you, you grow and you understand that, wow, that impacted me in these ways. That's not the person I want to be anymore. That's not the person I'm aspiring to be. So I need to navigate how, is this a relationship I want to keep? What is the level of toxicity in it? Is this a relationship I want to keep? If it is, how can I address the situation so that we can rebuild our interactions? I would say setting boundaries, like everyone has already said, is really going to be helpful. The thing is, a lot of times we focus on with toxicity, mental and physical abuse sometimes, but there's also financial toxicity. You may be in a process where you're maybe trying to save for a home or something like that, and you have a friend that persistently invites you out. So then you have to take agency over yourself, ownership, and say, hey, that's your boundary line. I'm trying to save for a home. I love spending time with you, but I'm going to have to reduce that so that I can meet this goal of mine. So boundary setting and maintaining them, developing some self-love, self-care practices, as Debanti, I think, mentioned earlier. That's a wide range on that, what that means to different people. And then trying to appreciate yourself daily when you're trying to prioritize your mental health. Like Patrece said, if you're in extremely toxic situations, even small toxic situations, a lot of times we're not prioritizing ourselves. So they just don't go together. So just finding ways to appreciate yourself daily. And then the other thing that's really helpful is trying to surround yourself with healthy interactions. And as Debanti mentioned, sometimes that means cutting off certain things. And for a period of time, it may feel a little lonely, but that's something that can be worked through too.
Yeah, when it comes to toxic relationships, I went through a period of time for maybe the last 5 years. It's like I was a swashbuckler and I was getting the toxic situations out in terms of some people. I have removed myself from relationship with those people. Other people, I've changed what the relationship is. So people who I sort of had close to my bosom, as I like to call it, they're now acquaintances, or they're now people that, we can go out and dance, or, but they're not people who I'm going to share parts of my heart with, because what I used to do is just give everybody my heart. And I had to realize I can't do that. And so, yeah, I've had to learn. I've had to learn.
Good. Love that. Thank you. All right, so we are going to move towards wrapping. But before we go, ladies, I wanted to ask you, well, let me just quickly read what the last couple of messages here. Ladies, if I don't get to you, please do not take that personal. But just in the interest of time. So Patrece added here, I would argue there is toxicity in every relationship, and the behaviors of those who we want or must stay in relationship would set boundaries around or within the relationship to mitigate or minimize toxic, harmful, uncomfortable, and unhealthy behaviors that impact us. She also added, my alone feels so good. I'll only have you if you're sweeter than my thought. So lady over here. Oh, is this a quote? Oh, it's a quote. Okay. I love it though, because I was gonna say this two book titles in one night. Okay. All right. So the body loves it. Kimberly says, Ruru, I used to be an open book too. Not anymore. Okay. All right. All right, ladies. So on that note, we have accomplished what's this, number seven of our 15 questions. Likely we will have to do, as we had discussed in our initial meeting, we're going to have to do a part two, ladies. There's no if, but, or maybe. There will have to be a part two. But before you go, I want to ask you, ladies, if there's any final thoughts that you wanted to add. One of the things that I also wanted you to add to, do you have any recommendations with regards to resources for continuing to follow up on these things that we discussed? So it could be podcast, it could be a movie, it could be a website, or it could be a program. Do you have any of those that you could discuss? And feel free to drop the link or in text in the chat here so that we can see that for ourselves as well.
I made a book recommendation in the chat, and it was a book I read about a year or two ago. It's called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It, and it's by Kamal Ravikant. There was also an audio book that I listened to last year, and it was called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. So that's an interesting one to think about too. And it really talks about constructs of the mind and changing your mindset on things and how you respond. So that might be helpful for the group.
A couple of books that I found very helpful are actually both by Steve Townsend. One is Boundaries, and the other is Necessary Endings. Another podcast that I find super helpful is Therapy for Black Girls. I love that particular podcast, and I also like a podcast. It's called Balance Black Girls.
So I think that there's different ways in which we learn and grow, and different ways in which this, what we've discussed becomes integrated as a practice, as opposed to just, thoughts that were like, oh, that's a good idea. I gotta tell you, I think that there's a lot of meditation resources out there, but I gotta tell you, do one of Chris Choreo's dance classes on YouTube. And literally, the reason that I say that is that, so often, right, like we think about trauma or mental health as a mental thing, but it's stored in our bodies as well, right? And there is so much to be said about just allowing the body to move and just shaking out some of those things in a more somatic way, right? So there's many different ways to work with, accept, be with your negativity, trauma, whatever it is, but getting a little bit of movement and dance like makes a difference in a very different way than a mental practice can be. All of those things are important, but I'm just gonna say that's also a way for your mental health, not just like to have a good time, but it's also a really good thing for your mental health. So had to do it, So that's how I found Chris Choreo too. Like I found her through, her YouTube tutorials, and I was like, this is so much fun. I'm having such a good time, even though it's a pandemic. So highly recommend. Preaching to the choir, I know, but
So I'll start off to say I gotta join one of these classes. I gotta get it together. My schedule won't let me. I gotta move one of my clients and move them out of the way so I can get into this class. Rhonda's been telling me, girl, you're missing out. So I'm gonna get it together. I'm gonna get it together and join in. But I just want to kind of sum it up with just saying, for everybody that's on the call or on the conference, get with a therapist, like Kiniya said earlier, and Debanti said, get with a therapist, get with someone professional, talk these things out. These are deeply embedded wounds, and a lot of these things need professional help. You need someone to help you facilitate getting through these things. So, really consider getting with a therapist and talking these things out, because, sometimes you need someone to hold your hand to unpack these things. They're so ugly that, dealing with them alone, you might not be very successful, So just having some help is great. I'll throw out a book recommendation as well. What Happened to You is an audio book that I've listened to. It's by Oprah Winfrey and Bruce Perry. And there's like some neuroscience. They talk about like neuroscience and about how these things, are stored in your body, like what your body's storing all this stuff, this trauma. And even though you've forgotten it in your brain, your body's not forgotten. It's keeping the score. So just to everyone, unpacking things.
All right, you fell out a little bit there. You cracked a little bit there. Can you just repeat that last line that you said? Unmute your mic, not hearing you.
Okay, there I am. Can you guys hear me now? I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. So I was just saying, I don't know where I cut off, but I was just saying that I had the book. Did you guys get the book recommendation? Yes. Okay. So I was just saying, just get with someone to help you unpack these things. Just, getting help with facilitating through the trauma and unpacking that trauma is a good thing. So just consider getting with a professional to unpack.
Awesome, awesome. Patrece, you had anything to add?
I put the book recommendations already,
Okay.
and all of the books that everyone. I'm familiar with some of the other books as well. My Grandmother's Hands is a somatic energy book that talks about how our body keeps score. It's the follow up kind of to the Body Keeps Score, and it's called Our Grandmother's Hands. And just piggybacking off of what everyone else is saying, I do want to end by saying and making sure everyone who hears our voice, who maybe listens to this recording, that they absolutely seek, additional support from a trained professional. I think that's incredibly important, but also just giving themselves permission to get to a better space and to heal. Yeah. And I think everybody took the first step just by joining us tonight. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And on that note, right before I give the official thank you, for the persons who are interested, I'll just drop a link here. So the Choreo, or it's become, at first, I said to my ladies all the time, I think one of the things that really helped me to transform and to really just flourish, have a community to flourish in the way it has, is that I've just kind of relaxed back and said, you know what, I'm in my receiving mode. Ladies, let's just do this. Tell me what you like. I will try to facilitate that. Oh, you like cooking? Okay, great. Well, you know what? I have my friend. I've known him for years. I'm gonna get him to come and teach you a cooking class. I have a friend who's a makeup artist. So like when you open yourself up, well, this is me speaking from a personal place, to just receiving, you'd be surprised to know how many other resources actually have existed right in front of you. You've always been enough. The people around you, if you start to, take on some of the principles and concepts that the panelists have talked to you about today, you start to live a more bountiful life, just more beautiful life. And so I just let you know about the sensuality challenge. It starts on the 28th, which is next week, Monday. We're going to be meeting weekly. It's a sensuality, 30 days of sensuality. So of course, there's going to be dancing. That is my base. That's what I started out as before I became a physio, before I became a personal trainer. Dancing is what has saved me. And as Debanti says, it's just one of those ways that you can, it's self-care. And so we do, let me just give you a very quick rundown. Wednesdays, we're going to be doing sensual dance. Mondays it's guided by the ebook. Tuesdays we're doing upper body workouts. Wednesdays I did that already, sensual dance. Thursdays lower body, legs like a goddess. I'm going to be guiding you, and then Fridays will be anything can happen Fridays, where I'm going to be having guest instructors from as far as Bali, teaching us how to tap into feminine energy. As I mentioned before, I have a celebrity chef who's going to be coming on board, teaching us a class. Yes, all this is going to be virtual. I also have a lady who is now my samba instructor. She's training me now to go to Brazil Carnival. And one day she did a sensual samba class, and I was like, girl, we need you. Do not play. So she's actually going to be coming on board as well. And did I mention everybody? Did I mention everybody? I hope I'm not missing out anybody. But yeah, and it's all going to be guided by an ebook. I will drop the link. I'm not sure if I did, but let me do it again. I'll drop the link in the group. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out. There's also a WhatsApp group that goes with this. So most of these ladies here, with the exception of only Patrece and Truvella, which they are absolutely invited for full access. Everybody, you're coming aboard, and so all of you will have full access. I dropped the link there, ladies. You can enjoy that. All right, so very quickly, let's just wrap up very quickly. I've indeed enjoyed this night, and I want to invite all participants to go ahead and just drop your thanks, drop everything while I read this for these ladies, because I am truly grateful for what has unfolded tonight. So I want to extend heartfelt thanks to the speakers for their invaluable contribution to empowering women, to this Empowering Women live discussion on this platform. So your insights and stories and your expertise have inspired and uplifted our community, providing practical tools and encouragement for women to embrace their power and prioritize holistic well-being. And for that, I thank you, ladies, so much. We will definitely be in touch. Thank you so much, ladies. It has been wonderful. Talk to you later. Good night, ladies.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
for having me. Good night.
Thank you so
I'll
much.
see you guys in a class this month,
Yes.
coming month.
Yes. Thank you, ladies.
Bye.